Thank you for joining us here this evening. I'm a little bit worried that my computer might die during this meeting because my portal's not working, but welcome all to our council meeting of Monday, May 5th, 2025. I would like to start off with a territorial acknowledgement. Generally, when we start these meetings, we acknowledge that we are broadcasting from the lands that are traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Chinootan peoples. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and the deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. My family farmed on the banks of the Grand River for 100 years continuously, and so I think a lot about the relationship between land and water in our decision making, and I just ask all of us to be mindful of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and the obligations that we have dating back to the two-row wampum to travel with our Indigenous neighbors and to do that through collaboration and partnership. I also just want to note at the beginning of council meetings, we like to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. And one of the other things I just want to note today is that it's the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, otherwise known as Red Dress Day. Red Dress Day was inspired by Métis artist Jamie Black's Red Dress Project installation, where she hung empty red dresses to represent missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Today and every day, we hold in our thoughts the families and communities who carry the weight and grief of losing loved ones. As a city, we recommit ourselves to disrupting and dismantling the systemic and patriarchal systems that perpetuate this violence. We continue the work of reconciliation so that Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people can experience the dignity, respect, and safety they deserve. There was a gathering today in Kitchener to mark this event, and many people joined in, and it's really important for us all to show allyship during such ceremonial moments. We are on to the disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof, so I ask council if you have anything to declare. And seeing none, we will move on to the approval of minutes. Do I have a mover for the minutes? That's Mary Lou Rowe, seconded by Councillor Bodley, and all in favor? And that is unanimous, thanks. We have one item on our consent motion, so I just ask whether anybody needs removal of that item so that we can discuss it, or if there's a mover for this consent item. That's Councillor Rowe moving, seconded by Mayor McCabe. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. We are on to staff reports. So we're item 9A, Regional Working Group Fireworks Recommendations, and I believe Nicole Pepke has a presentation.
Good evening, Chair Wright, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. This is an overview of the staff report related to recommendations to update the current fireworks bylaw based on the work of the Area Municipality Working Group. The fireworks bylaw was last updated in 2021. At that time, Council approved updates following concerns raised after the Victoria Day weekend. In 2021, recommendations to Council were based on community comments, a municipal scan, and environmental considerations. At that time, Council approved a shortened number of days and added the Lunar New Year. Information about being mindful of environmentally sensitive areas and mapping was added to the city's webpage. Despite these changes, misuse and challenges related to fireworks continued, both in the city of Waterloo and elsewhere in the region. In October of 2024, Council passed a motion directing staff to work with the area municipalities to create more alignment and possibly look at further restrictions. The Area Municipality Working Group consisted of the cities of Kitchener and Cambridge and the townships of North Dumfries, Wellesley, Woolwich, and Wilmot. We met on a weekly basis to look at best practices, how our bylaws differed, and challenges in our area and how we could best align. Prior to our first meeting, City of Kitchener staff had conducted outreach to various municipalities that had banned both the use and sale of fireworks. Brampton, Caledon, Milton, Woodstock, and the cities of Vancouver and West Vancouver all reported a significant decrease in complaints once the ban was in place, but acknowledged that it usually took a year or so to see a reduction in the number of complaints. They cited some lessons learned and a common theme related to education and also the possibility of cities hosting alternative events. The working group then met with the Chief Advocacy Officer for the Canadian National Fireworks Association. In addition, he was also a presenter at a forum for the Municipal Licensing and Enforcement Forum in November of 2024. Their position to our working group is that bans do not work, and more enforcement and increased fines coupled with education is the key to reducing complaints related to misuse of fireworks. This did not necessarily align with our research that did indeed ban fireworks. I will also note that enforcement has proved challenging for our team based on the nature of fireworks complaints, as it can take some time for an officer to locate them, and the complaints often point to a general location rather than a specific. There is also an increase in the volume of calls during the times that fireworks are permitted. There were some charges laid last year during two rather egregious situations involving an assault and fireworks being set off from a motor vehicle. All of those did require considerable time and resources. And then finally, the working group conducted a joint survey that was promoted on the Old Engage platform that garnered over 3,000 responses. Of those, approximately 990 responses were from City of Waterloo residents. The survey is not considered statistically significant. However, there were some themes that were noted, and it should be noted that over half of the respondents did want more regulations that included a reduction in the number of days. It was also noteworthy that there was a desire for more public displays. The City of Waterloo does do a drone show in Waterloo Park each year. So on to the recommendations. So based on the work of the Area Municipality Working Group, staff are recommending the following for the City of Waterloo to update their bylaw to have more alignment with the neighboring cities. That would include reducing the number of days, having specific start and end times, and staff are recommending banning the sale of fireworks in the City of Waterloo beginning in January of 2026. The working group did feel this was a balanced approach in terms of thinking of the needs and enjoyments of some consumers and addressing some issues of the residents who are opposed to fireworks and the use of them. Further, the working group felt that this could possibly promote more mindful purchases. Fireworks would still be available for purchase online with proof of age and a delivery address. In 2024, there were 4 temporary vendor licenses issued in the City of Waterloo. And at this time, fireworks are currently permitted to be sold for 7 days before the designated day. The final recommendation that staff are looking at is increasing the current fines from $400 for a first violation to $1,000 for a first violation. It should be noted that there won't be complete alignment. Basically, the townships, on the nature of their complaints and their municipalities, will not have all of these in place. Should the recommendations be supported by council, staff would come back with an updated bylaw and fine schedule, and there would be plans for an educational campaign on these changes. The increase in fines and the educational component are in line with the recommendations from the Canadian National Fireworks Association. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that information. And so I'm going to turn to council and ask you if you have any questions for Nicole. Go ahead, Councillor Roach.
Through your chair, thank you, Nicole, for this presentation. You mentioned just 990 Waterloo residents responded, and that it's not statistically significant. You know, we have a population, I think, Mary, you said we have 160 now, 160. And then there was kind of a mixed things that I just want to try to understand. You said it's like 60% didn't attend fireworks, but 66% enjoyed fireworks, and so there's a mixed opinion. So it's not a real clear mandate for a ban, is there?
Sorry, correct. Yeah, there were some definite themes and some contradictions within the survey as well.
And then just following up, you mentioned about enforcement, challenging, enforcement, and limiting the fireworks to 1 day per holiday and just a 2 hour window. I think, wouldn't you agree it's kind of overly strict, and residents will just simply, if they're not allowed to buy it here, buy it somewhere else, and then that policy is basically unenforceable from your team.
We're hoping that through education and more awareness that the regulations would be adhered to. It is a common theme we hear that the time frame is too long. Our current bylaw states you can start at dusk. So the working group agreed that if we were all aligned in terms of having specific start times, it would be helpful. And it's certainly helpful given that Kitchener and Cambridge and Waterloo are also all dispatched by Waterloo Regional Police.
Right.
So there was always some challenges with timing and when those could begin.
And just going back to that area municipal working group, Waterloo region isn't really aligned, are they? Like North Dumfries, Woolwich, Wellesley, they already banned Diwali fireworks, don't they?
Through you, Chair. So currently, Diwali is not a recognized holiday in Woolwich and North Dumfries. And then the city of Waterloo and Wilmot recognize the Lunar New Year. So there are a few little nuances within the cities
And then
townships.
getting back to your report with regard to other solutions, and there's like smart solutions, like even cities like Brampton and Vancouver, according to the report, admit education and enforcement work better than bans.
Sorry, could you repeat
Like
that?
Vancouver and Brampton admit that education and enforcement work better than bans.
No, sorry.
Am I wrong? I could be
Through
wrong.
you, Chair, in the research on the municipalities that did ban both the sale and use, they actually had success, and the complaints decreased typically within year 2 of the ban. But one of the things they did talk about was continuing with that education in addition to the ban. That was a common theme from those municipalities.
Yeah, that's right. I was reading.
Yeah.
They need clear communication and better permitting and targeted bylaw enforcement. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions? Go ahead, Mayor McCabe.
Thank you, and thank you for the report and the work on this issue. I'm curious with the respondents and the information when they said to that sort of dichotomy of like they like fireworks, but they also don't. There's lots of things that they don't like about them. Did people distinguish between they like fireworks that, like the drone show idea that the city puts on versus fireworks that someone lets off in their own backyard?
Through you, Chair, based on the feedback from the survey, and I recognize that there were some challenges with that feedback, it actually indicated that 90% of those surveyed didn't actually go to private fireworks and cited it for a number of reasons, and there was some mixed feelings on whether they actually liked fireworks. However, there was the one clear message that did come through was the support for more regulations related to fireworks. There was also some, 2/3 of respondents did support banning fireworks altogether. Again, because of the number of respondents, it's difficult to put a lot of weight in it, but there were a lot of themes, and one of the common themes was the regulatory piece.
Right, and not that it's scientific, but just, you know, looking, sorry, I don't mean, I've received some emails from people, and I've looked at various social media commentary around this, and not that that's scientific, that's what I was referring to, the scientific, but it seems like the comments that I've seen and what people have said to me is that, you know, they like the idea of fireworks. People love the drone show that the city of Waterloo puts on. But yeah, they don't like the disruption it causes to a lot of neighborhoods if they're done in private areas. And personally, you know, like animals, there's lots of people who are really disrupted by the, you know, the noise and the banging, especially when you don't know when to expect it. Like if people are doing them, you know, on their own private property and that when it comes out of the blue. And then of course I saw there was comments about the environmental damage because it's a lot of additional carbon launched into the atmosphere, and then the garbage that's left on the ground, and you know, animals can again get into that kind of stuff as well. But I think the time frame that you're talking about does make a lot of sense because, you know, drone shows or fireworks only make sense when it's dark. So a 2-hour period to me made sense because, you know, you shouldn't let them off in the daytime. Like, what's the point, right? But okay, I was just curious about the difference that people maybe express between private displays versus public displays. Thanks.
There did appear to be a common theme for a desire for bigger public displays. That was a very common theme throughout the survey, that those are missed, and perhaps that's the increase in the family fireworks and the private ones.
Councillor Rowe, did you want to ask questions?
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you so much for the report. This is a tough one because some people love fireworks, and full disclosure, I do, but I also understand the challenges associated with that. I'm wondering, Nicole, I have 2 questions. One, just when you were talking about the number of respondents across the region versus City of Waterloo, were you able to look at the broad region responses, and if those were also in line roughly with the Waterloo answers?
Yes, through you, Chair. They typically were, the bigger themes were the reduction in the number of days. Waterloo actually had the most days of all of the municipalities, and the reduction in time. There were mixed feelings on a full ban versus more enforcement and education, but there definitely were the themes of more regulation around it. And the complaints really about the misuse, which seems to be a prevalent theme.
Thank you. That I thought was an important detail, just to understand that this, excuse me, while statistically may be small across the region, it wasn't an anomaly. I also wondered, like, we have the set days, but should a neighborhood group, for example, wish to host an event and have fireworks, can you walk me through that process?
Sure. So would this be outside of the designated
Yes.
day? So we don't receive a lot of requests for those, and they do go through Waterloo Fire. So they would have to do a display fireworks request through Waterloo Fire Rescue and have a licensed pyrotechnician on scene in order to do that.
So just to summarize, a neighborhood association, for example, could request to have a fireworks display on an alternate date.
We still have a process
Yes,
for,
but there's still a
for
process for
display
that.
fireworks. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, Council? Okay. Thank you very much, Nicole. I also want to note that there are no registered delegations on this item tonight. The procedure bylaw permits delegations in writing, and the following written delegations were received and provided to Council for consideration. There was one from Aleem Kanji, the Canadian National Fireworks Association, and one from Greg Kasparian of Kaboom Fireworks. And Council has received those and had an opportunity to read them. So at this time, I will ask whether Council, if there's anyone who would like to move the recommendations that are presented by Nicole Papke. Okay, Councillor Bodley. Do we want to have any, I guess I need a seconder. Okay, thanks. Councillor Hanmer has seconded it. Do we want to have any more discussion at this point? Go ahead, Councillor Rowe.
I think I'm just interested in perhaps what some of the other wards are hearing in terms of the issues. If we can talk about that a little bit and perhaps what some of the examples would be and prevalence of complaints.
Go ahead, Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Chair Wright. Just from my experience in Ward 2, it's much to your commentary. There are people who love fireworks, and then there are people who hate them, and people all in between. So, again, me personally, I love fireworks. When I was a kid, I grew up in London, and every Victoria Day was a family gathering. We got together, we all brought our own fireworks, and it was a great, wonderful way for everyone to get together. However, we were following the rules and doing it appropriately, and I would say over the last 6 years, my experience being on council is that the disrespect of certain folks lighting off fireworks has increased significantly, and that's created a significant amount more complaints to me anyways. I can't speak for all of my council colleagues. It is a persistent discussion on the neighborhood Facebook groups, and perhaps we shouldn't follow those things for all of their decorum, but it is a constant discussion every time there is a fireworks holiday that the fireworks were disrupting the wildlife, disrupting the forest, that there was firework litter left in multiple parks, that people were setting off fireworks at all hours of the night, that people were not using them appropriately. And so I would say that the reason why at council we had directed staff back in October is partially because of this number of complaints that we have received. And so myself, I'm pleased with the recommendations from the report. I'm happy to support them. I think what this does is for the folks like my family who would set off fireworks on Victoria Day and follow the rules. Yes, we would have to do a little bit more planning around where and how we would get our fireworks, but we would still be able to do that, and we're not banning the use of them. Whereas the folks who are perhaps more reckless and not using fireworks in an appropriate manner would just have a limited, the access to them would be limited. There wouldn't be a trailer across the street from the high school selling fireworks. So from my perspective, based on what we've seen in the other municipalities that have tried this, I think this is the next step for us. We have slowly, over the 6 years that I've been on council, been restricting fireworks and changing the bylaw repeatedly to try and get residents to comply with what are reasonable requests of their neighbors. And I think this is just the next step. So I'm happy to support it and see if we get similar results to the other municipalities that have done this, but I also appreciate that it's a challenging discussion because, yeah, lots of people in our community do enjoy fireworks.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Chair, through you. I'm hearing similar complaints to Councillor Bodley in Ward 2. It's a lot of the noise, it's animals, it's the debris that's left behind. Lots of people love fireworks, and I hear a lot about the drone show that the city has done, and I think if we could do it for each one of the opportunities, that people would be really happy. It's the public display that they quite like. The other piece I hear is also about allergies and just the quality of the air as a result, and concerns about safety. So it's difficult. It's a tough choice to be making, but I think we do need to consider all of the residents that we have, and if there are alternatives that we can be offering, like the drone show that we do for July 1st, I think those are a good next step for us to be doing as well.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Roach.
I also enjoy the fireworks. Being pretty much a lifelong resident of Waterloo, we would make it a tradition to, bring our lawn chairs, right up onto Beringer Road, kind of where the new hospital is going to be, right, and just watch the fireworks. I think that we're let off at Columbia Lake, and it would just be a fantastic event, and we really loved fireworks. I have a problem with banning the sale, but not the use of fireworks, and I really don't think that, I understand the complaints. I have complaints too that have come in with regard to their people's dogs and certain complaints. I haven't heard the allergies or that yet. But I just don't think it's backed by strong data, and I think it's unfair to some of the residents. I think we could do this responsibly with proper enforcement. I don't think that saying that it's hard to enforce is a reason to not do it. So I will not be supporting these recommendations.
And is there anyone else who wants to speak to this? Okay, I will introduce the elephant in the room, being, oh, go ahead.
No, can I actually ask a question of staff? Or are we done there?
I think you can still ask a question of staff.
Okay. Thank you. Actually, just something that Councillor Roach mentioned about the ban, and maybe a little bit further understanding of why the ban and what the idea is behind making it more challenging to get the fireworks.
Certainly, through you, Chair. So the working group had discussed a variety of options, including a full ban on both the use and sale. We realized fairly quickly that there may not be a complete alignment on that, and our direction from council was to try to, have more alignment with all of our municipalities as best we could. We really did understand and hear that there is an enjoyment for fireworks, but it is a very divisive issue, and we receive many complaints about them, even when they're being set off at the appropriate times. So the thought process of the working group was that we would have a compromise in terms of still permitting the use, but perhaps if you ban the sale within the region, the thought process was it would prevent more of an impulse purchase. It would be a more mindful time where people would take the time and go make a purchase. If it's outside of the region, it could be, but you can also order them online. You have to provide proof of age. So that was sort of the idea behind the working group's recommendation to ban the sale, was really to prevent that kind of impulse. I'm driving by, I'm going to see this, and have a more mindful approach to a fairly, significant issue within the community.
Okay, anything else at this point? Okay. So I'm just going to use my 2 minutes as chair to just comment. The elephant in the room, of course, is that I am one of the people that was affected last July after being shot in the face intentionally with fireworks. So I strongly believe that we need some certainty and regulation around the use of fireworks, and largely building on Councillor Bodley's comments about the sort of decline in appropriate behavior associated with the use of fireworks. It's not just young people running around and shooting each other with Roman candles, it's adults. And the person who assaulted me was an adult in their mid-30s, so we can't just blame this on young and uninformed residents of our community. Secondly, the City of Kitchener was very clear that they did embark on quite a significant education campaign and still had one of the toughest enforcement nights of the year on July 1st. In fact, police resources were used to such a degree that there was no one available for anything else in the city. It was pretty insane. And I was talking to dispatch that night, 911 dispatch. So you can see that the resources are tapped, and we do actually need to use our regulatory muscle in order to enforce some of the rules around fireworks. So I will definitely be voting in support of this one step further. And I do think we're going to have to work broadly across the region to determine what we can do together, because obviously we can't just be doing this work on our own. We need cooperation across the region, but limiting some of the supply and limiting some of the impulsive behavior around the access to that supply is one step further that we can take. Another I would just like to suggest is that we really do need to monitor our schoolyards around Waterloo, because this is one of the very, very frequent locations in which fireworks are being misused. Between our parks and our schoolyards, these are places that should be accessible to all residents, and increasingly on these special fireworks events occasions, they are no longer safe for our residents. So I think at this point, we can just call the vote on this. All in favor? And that is carried by 5 of us out of 6. 1, 2. Sorry? Okay, and all those opposed? We have 1. And that is carried. Thank you, everyone, for a productive conversation. We are moving on to item, let's see here, it is 9B in our package. I keep having to take my glasses on and off again, which results in me missing what I'm reading. We have the significant festivals and events for bylaw exemption. I don't think that there's a report, but I think there's an opportunity to ask staff questions, should anyone have questions. Go ahead, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you so much, through you, Chair. Hello. Thank you for this report. I'm actually just wondering if you can walk me through the process, just a little bit of how, like this year, there's 5 festivals and events, maybe in other years there's more or less. So just how that process works in designating which festivals and events are approved.
Through the chair to you, Councillor Rowe. This report is capturing the 5 of our affiliate groups, affiliate events only, in a admin report so that they don't have to request their exemptions individually to council, as each one would have to be passed individually. So they're basically the 5 of our 33 affiliates that would require exemptions. So just for more like, I believe about 10 or 12 years ago, is for like tidy housekeeping to just try to do them all at once.
And so just to clarify, they request this, right? Or is this through the city that you identified that? I'm just curious of how the process works.
So through you, Chair, to Councillor Rowe, staff work with our affiliate organizations throughout the year. These are ongoing, long-running events. But if there were any new festivals that emerged as part of that discussion, we would certainly include them in the report if a bylaw exemption made sense. We have other affiliates that have changed. This report used to include fireworks, and whether or not fireworks have been part of events has changed. So those are the kinds of changes in event planning that result in changes to the list of events that are included.
Okay, great, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you through you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. So the BIA, I know that, sorry, I'm just trying to find my question here. So the BIA, there's a number, like I think 3 of the events on here are from the BIA, which is great. But I'm just wondering about other event festivals and events that they offer and why some of those aren't on this list, and could some of those be included for these bylaw exemptions? Like one of the examples given was the Strummer Festival. And yeah, can you comment on that?
Through you, Chair, to the Mayor. So none of the events included are BIA events. They're all third-party, not-for-profit organizations that are affiliated with the City of Waterloo. So those are the events under the policy that are eligible for exemption under this request, this specific request. Events that are led by the BIA can request exemption from bylaws from council. Again, as Scott mentioned, the intent of this report is just an administrative tool to sort of speed up the process for the bigger festivals and events that are offered by affiliates every year.
Sorry, I should have said BIA-sponsored events, because they get really involved with the Busker Carnival, Afrofest, and the Jazz Fest. So yeah, I meant to say the BIA-sponsored event. So I guess my question is, like, why couldn't they be included in this?
So through you, Chair, to the mayor, any event can request an exemption.
Okay, so if they
it just
can't-
wouldn't be part of this particular report because this report speaks specifically to a specific policy, the festivals and events policy, which outlines very clear criteria for inclusion in this particular report. But other events can request exemptions at any time for bylaw exemptions.
No, I realize that. I guess I'm not understanding it, so, like, why they, so if the process here, so if the BIA wanted to apply through this policy to have events that are annual exempted through this administrative process so that they don't have to go through that, is that possible?
Not according to the policy as written. The policy only pertains to affiliated organizations, and affiliated organizations are governed by an affiliation policy.
Okay, so I guess, okay, so I'll take that back then. I guess you need to look at the policy itself.
I might also just note that the BIA events are covered under the forthcoming noise bylaw that's coming to council May 26th. And then also, they do have their own vendor license, which applies to their events. So they may already have coverage of the different things that this policy also covers.
I don't think they do, but so, okay, I'll take a look at that policy then. Or get them to take a look at the policy, really, and see if it's something that we should take a look at. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions at this point? Okay, do we have a mover for this, to accept this report? That's Councillor Rowe, and a seconder. That's Councillor Roach, and all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We are on to item 9C, which is former Crousland's disposition, and we have a report prepared by Kristen Sainsbury. Again, I don't think that there is a presentation, so we can just open the floor to questions of Kristen Sainsbury. Does anyone have questions? Okay, go ahead, Mayor McCabe.
Thank you. There's Kristen. Thanks, Kristen, for the report, and yeah, really excited to see this this report come forward. I know it's we've had a lot of back and forth. My question is really just about, could you describe the engagement that's occurred over the past couple of years, or 4 years, or however long it is, with First Nations communities with respect to this development?
Through you, Chair, to the Mayor, yes. So over the past couple of years, we have engaged First Nations about the development. At this point, it's fairly high level, as we have a high level concept. So the conversations have been more engaged around, at this point, the environmental. So their input was taken into account in forming the terms of reference that has been used for the environmental monitoring. Under the current official plan, there's 2 years of environmental monitoring required for the property. And we have standard terms of reference that we would use for that have been set out by the city's planning team. And so we brought in those based on input we received. As well, input was received around archaeological work, and more advanced archaeological work has been undertaken on the site as well. And so as the environmental and the archaeological wrap up, we'll be continuing to engage with them, and as development concepts start to come forward tied to some of those environmental findings around what the impact of proposed development could be, then those will be more detailed conversations that we'll have and we'll be getting their input on.
Thank you very much. I think that's been a really important part of the process, and I think I know it started before I was sitting around the council table, and before half of us were sitting around the council table, but I think we are fortunate that we're working with a developer who was willing to work with us and to work with First Nations to go through this process, because I know there is a number of pieces, elements of this that added to probably to the preferred timeline, but I think it's been good to take that time and to get to where we are today. So sometimes I think working with a good local developer, you know, you can get the kind of outcome that we're looking for, because you know, 100 affordable housing units coming through this process is really great for this community. We know that affordable housing it's kind of all we talk about sometimes, right? We know that there's a deep need for that. In addition to the project that the city is doing at 2025 University Avenue, there's just more that's needed. So we certainly appreciate Urban Legends working with us on a variety of issues, but particularly that one to get us to where we need on this issue. So, but pleased to hear about the First Nations consultation and engagement and that it will continue. Thanks very much.
Do we have any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Just building on, Kristen, thank you for the presentation and the recommendations. I'm just curious what that involvement of the First Nations is going to look like going forward, or is it too soon to say what that will be?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Hanmer. I think it might be too soon to say. Ultimately, we'll be taking their direction. So we have built a rapport with them. We have contacts on their respective planning teams that we've been engaging with. So we communicate fairly regularly, respecting their level of interest as well, in that some of them have large geographic areas, and responding to every application in all of those areas is a big undertaking. So we'll take the direction, I guess, based on the ongoing conversations that we have in terms of the level of engagement and interests that they have.
And I can appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's important that we, in light of your comments earlier, Councillor Wright, talking about the collaboration and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to keep that collaboration open and the opportunity. I can only imagine how many different requests they've got on their plates, and it's a lot to keep going. So as long as we keep those doors open, I think that's a good next step for us as well. So thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Roach.
I have Kristen, thanks for this report. Just a question that just popped into my head, considering the collaboration and consultation with First Nations, is there any consideration to changing what we refer to this property as the former Krause lands to maybe something more appropriate, now that it's sold to Urban Legend?
Thank you, through you, Chair, to Councillor Roach. Yes, I think there will be consideration of that as we move forward, and I think that will be something as the concepts get evolved and the community visioning starts to happen, some of the engagement more broadly within the community, I think will inform what that name might be.
Great, thank you very much.
Are there other questions? Okay, we do have a registered delegate here this evening. I'm just wondering whether Mr. Levesque would like to come to the podium. And just as you get there, make sure that you're comfortable that the podium is at the height that you want. That's right. You will have 10 minutes. And just please state your name and your city of residence.
Sure. It's Paul Levesque. I'm president of Urban Legend Developments, and I reside in Woolwich. But my business is located in Waterloo, and I've been here for 25 years. So good evening, Chair and members of Council. First of all, I want to start by telling you about an experience for me that has occurred on more than one occasion, and one that you may have encountered as well. It's while I'm flying home, and the plane is coming in for landing at Pearson. The plane is traveling low and slow, and at that slow speed and low altitude, it allows me the opportunity to gaze out the window and study the land below. Now, in most cases, landing an airplane is usually a pretty cool experience because it gives me the opportunity to study the land down below and see how humans have shaped it. But unfortunately, I don't find this experience to be quite as inspiring as I'm flying into Pearson. That's not because Ontario is home and familiar. It's because beneath me is row after row, cul-de-sac after cul-de-sac of square brick boxes with uniform roofs. We coincidentally call these communities. I'm not sure about you, but this is not the image that I think of when I think of the word community. Perhaps you've experienced this as well. As a builder, I find the discrepancy between our ideals of community and reality a bit disheartening. But it doesn't have to be this way. I think we can all agree that communities have some form of character, defined by the collective architecture, natural environment, and people that occupy them. When the request for expression of interest came out on Krause, I asked myself, what character was the city seeking to achieve? Perhaps it was the character of a staunch but wise elderly man. Perhaps it was that witty young girl that you meet in line at the grocery store with a big smile and a fast one-liner. Let me tell you about the character of the community I envisioned for Crouse at that time. I see a community with the character of someone who says hi as you walk down the sidewalk. Someone who's concerned about the world that they're going to leave to their children and makes an effort to open up the window instead of turning the air conditioner on. Someone who perhaps struggling to get by in life, but goes to work every day undeterred to work hard because their character compels them to make a better life for themselves and their family. Someone whose character is paying it forward by generously giving with their time and money. I see the character of someone who organizes a community barbecue because they want to know their neighbors. Make no mistake, the priorities we share together for the Crouse-lands will influence and shape the ultimate outcome and character of this community. Priorities such as connecting within and around the adjacent neighborhoods of Eastbridge, Carriage Crossing, and the broader Rim Parklands. Prioritizing people over vehicles. Ensuring the building and natural environment are carefully designed with features that are sustainable. Providing a mix of housing types that serve multiple family formations and income levels. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe these are the defining characteristics of what the city envisioned for these lands. When I set out to draft my proposal for these lands, I didn't put my developer cap on. Instead, I imagined coming back 20 years from now and looking back what had been created decades ago. I imagined what the community had become and what shared values it held on to. I imagined what its character would be. From this image, I formed an amazing and talented team around me who set out to plant the seeds of what would grow into this character. I stand before you after a long journey of 5 years. I want to thank city staff and members of council for setting the bar high, believing in my vision, and for the countless hours of hard work they put into this project to get to this point. And in particular, Kristen, thank you for everything that you've done. I look forward to working with all of you to bring this collective vision to life. Now, I started this evening to tell you about my experiences landing at Pearson. Well, I'd also like to tell you that I much prefer takeoffs. And I'm extremely grateful and excited to say that today we are starting a new journey, because today we are taxiing to the runway for takeoff. It will be a long journey, and no doubt there will be some turbulence along the way, as there always is with any large and complex undertaking. But we can always look forward to the descent, where we will be able to look out the window to the community we've created and know that it personifies in every respect the values of this wonderful city that we call home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levesque, and I think I can speak for Councillor Freeman. This project is in her ward, Ward 4. She couldn't be with us tonight, but definitely the vision that you have for this this parcel is really inspiring, and you've given us a pretty evocative description of the inspiration behind it. We also just want to acknowledge the much-needed amenities that this project will bring to that stretch of University Avenue East, and just the way in which you've honored the natural environment and included affordable housing in this project. So thank you for that. Council, do we have questions for Mr. Levesque? Okay, seeing none, I'm just wondering whether someone would like to move the recommendations. That's Mayor McCabe, and seconded by Councillor Roach. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We are moving on to the public meeting portion of our agenda. We have a formal public meeting to discuss zone change application. And I'm just going to read the procedure. Find this. This is item 10A, zone change application Z1720, draft plan of subdivision. Ooh, doing a lot of housing tonight. 30T 17403 Activa Holdings Incorporated, 550 Roy Schmidt Road and 558 Conservation Drive. Any persons who want further notice of this application, including the passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate register in the binder, which is at the back on the desk. And if there is any more than one binder, please make sure that you are signing the appropriate one. Will the clerk please advise council of the method used to give notice of the meeting and the dates notice was given?
Notice was advertised in the KW Record on March 27th and April 10th, 2025, and mailed or emailed on April 2nd, 2025, to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, to public agencies, to all persons who signed in or spoke at the informal public meeting held on November 27th, 2017, and to all persons who requested further notice.
Thank you. And the planner, Amanda Wazinski, will now give a brief overview of the application. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Wright, Mayor McCabe, and members of council. Staff have received a subdivision and rezoning application for the lands municipally known as 550 Roy Schmidt Road and 558 Conservation Drive from MHPC on behalf of Activia Holdings, Inc. My presentation today will summarize the proposal and speak to my recommendations to council. The subject lands are located northeast of the Conservation Road and Beaver Creek Road intersection, south of the existing Conservation Meadows subdivision, which received draft plan approval in August 2005 and registration in July 2006. The subject lands have a total area of approximately 8 hectares, with frontages along Conservation Road and Roy Schmidt Road. Southwest of the subject lands is the Northgate Cartway subdivision development. The lands are currently vacant, with the applicant also seeking a further demo control extension. In regards to the official plan, the subject lands are designated as low-density residential and are within the Beaver Creek Meadows District Plan and are also within specific provision areas 37 and 62. The low-density residential designation contemplates for building typologies such as single detached dwellings and townhouses. Site-specific provision area 37 applies to the node at the intersection of Conservation Drive and Conservation Drive and Beaver Creek Meadows, and speaks to permitting a maximum density of 300 bedrooms per hectare and a maximum building height of 20 meters. The mixed-use apartment building proposed in Block 19, which is closest to the intersection, is in alignment with this. Site-specific provision area 62, which applies to the entire Beaver Creek Meadows area, describes how the overall density of the area shall be planned to achieve a minimum of 58 residents and jobs combined per hectare. The proposed draft plan of subdivision is in alignment with this policy, as the density of 64 to 110 net persons per jobs per hectare are proposed. This additional density will help to offset other areas of the district plan that either cannot be developed or cannot achieve the overall minimum density due to various development constraints. In regards to zoning, the subject lands are currently zoned as zone change application, which only recognizes the existing uses. The applicant has submitted a number of studies as seen on the screen, and recommendations have been implemented either as site-specific provisions or through recommended draft plan conditions. A recommendation includes an increased setback from Conservation Drive to avoid the use of noise attenuation or other measures. In regards to the proposed subdivision, is it intended to be a continuation of the existing Conservation Meadows subdivision? There will be similar building designs and unit typologies. In general, the more dense uses such as stacked townhouses or a mixed building are to be closest to Conservation Drive and transition downward in density towards the existing subdivision. The existing park will be enlarged and the Hydro Trail corridor will continue and connect to Conservation Drive with a 3-meter wide multi-use trail. The subdivision is expected to be serviced through planned upgrades to Beaver Creek Road and Conservation Drive and the future sanitary pumping station within the nearby Northgate subdivision. The applicant is also seeking an additional 5-year extension to September 09, 2030 to obtain a building permit for the replacement of 2 dwelling units at 550 Roy Schmidt Road and 558 Conservation Drive. Staff do not oppose this request as the demolished dwellings can be replaced following subdivision registration. Their timing is also dependent upon the reconstruction of Beaver Creek Road and Conservation Drive and the pump station within the neighboring lands. In regards to zoning, staff are recommending Section 7 in the zoning bylaw be amended to introduce the 5 residential Beaver Creek zones. The 5 zoning categories were created through the Northgate applications, but have not formally been consolidated into the zoning bylaw, given other appeals to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The intent is for the new zoning categories to be used throughout the entire Beaver Creek Meadows District Plan area. The blocks identified in yellow are intended to be rezoned to residential Beaver Creek 2, which permits singles, semis, and townhouses with a maximum height of 10 meters. The blocks identified in orange are intended to be rezoned as residential Beaver Creek 3, which permits townhouses with a maximum height of 10 meters. The blocks identified in pink is Block 18 and is proposed to be rezoned as residential Beaver Creek 4, which permits a multi-unit residential building and townhouses with a maximum height of 12 meters. The block identified in blue is Block 19 and is proposed to be rezoned as residential Beaver Creek 5, which permits multi-unit residential and a mixed-use building with a maximum building height of 20 meters. Staff are also recommending site-specific exemptions be applied to the subdivision lands to reflect the proposed development and to implement recommendations from the studies. In regards to the site-specific zoning exemptions, staff are recommending 5 site-specific provisions. One site-specific exemption is an increased setback of 9.4 meters from Conservation Drive, whereas a minimum of 3 and 5 meters are required. This applies to blocks 18, 19, and 10, and is a recommendation from the road noise study. Another proposed site-specific exemption is to permit screen parking between Conservation Drive and the building line on block 18 and 19. Due to the compounded effect of vehicular entrances not being permitted from Conservation Drive, the grading of the lands, and the required increased street setback from conservation, staff are recommending screen parking be permitted between the building line. Staff are recommending a minimum setback of 3 meters on block 18 and 19, which aligns with the minimum side yard requirement. This site-specific provision is technical in nature to address the cluster requirements in section 3C10 of the zoning bylaw, and recognizes this lot line will function as a side lot line. A final site-specific exemption to permit a maximum of 8 dwelling units is in block 16 is proposed. Staff do not oppose the site-specific provision, as the general intent of the regulation is maintained, given the request is limited only to 1 block. And then in regards to my recommendation, staff are recommending approval of staff report IPPW 2025-012. Staff are also recommending the approval of zoning bylaw amendment Z1720 and amending section 7 in the zoning bylaw to add the residential Beaver Creek zones. Staff are also recommending council approve draft plan of subdivision 30T 17403, subject to staff's recommended draft plan conditions. Staff are also recommending a further extension of 5 years to obtain a building permit for the replacement of 2 dwelling units pursuant to the demolition control bylaw. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And does any councillor have any questions for staff? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Roach.
Thank you very much, Amanda. This is exciting. It's especially exciting because it's right in the middle of my Ward 3. You mentioned about road updates, Beaver Creek Road and Conservation Road. And I think I'd also want to consider Westmount Road between Benjamin and Conservation, probably the worst road in Waterloo. And there'll be a lot of traffic on that road, but that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions from council? Go ahead,
Well,
Mayor.
just, I didn't hear an answer to his question about the Westmount Road.
Perhaps Ron can help us out there.
Through you, Chair Wright, to Councillor Roach. Yes, Councillor Roach, I would agree with you. The pavement conditions are not good on that road any longer. It's served us well, but it's time for reconstruction. And the teams in engineering, consulting with our friends in transportation, are looking at the design work right now. And there will be some intersection improvements as well at Conservation Drive with a roundabout, at least it's planned, or a turning circle, if we can obtain the real estate. So yeah, watch for future road improvements there. It won't be constructed this year, but it's in the active design phase right now.
Thank you for that, Mr. Ormson. Go ahead, Mayor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to Amanda. Thanks very much for the report. Just a couple of questions. I was curious about transit routes. through here, because like with my regional council hat on, I know in the past year or so, we've heard quite a bit about the lack of transit routes out, particularly in that area. So I'm wondering if there's transit routes like have been considered, and if you've been connecting with the region to let them know about this additional housing development that's been proposed. Because the GRT is currently going through a business planning process, and the more information they have about where some of these projects are going, housing projects are going, the better. So if you could just comment on that, please.
Yeah, excellent question. To the mayor's through chair, right? There's actually a draft plan condition that requires funding for 3 transit paths within the subdivision. That condition came from our colleagues in regional planning.
Oh, great. Okay, that's good to know. And my other question, just to pick up on Councillor Roach's question, because there's construction that's starting to happen with the Beaver Creek Road and Conservation Drive housing development out there. Are there any synergies that can happen with any of, because of the relative close proximity that can happen that, and I don't know what those might be, but just to help with maybe defraying some of the costs, because these 2 projects are happening relatively closely together? Is that possible at all?
Through you, Chair Wright, Councillor McCabe. In theory, yes, Mayor. Normally, though, developers, when they're constructing their own local roads, use their own consultants and their own contractors to do that type of work, unless it's a DC item in which we would construct it on their behalf. I think we could always talk to Activa and see if there's any room for partnerships, but my understanding based on convention would be that they would construct those roads on their own.
Okay. Okay, and then my last question around this is just because I believe there's a church not too far. Is the church adjacent?
Through the chair, so the church is not adjacent to this subdivision, is further west down Conservation Drive.
I was just curious if they had any consideration of redevelopment there, like keeping the place of worship, but maybe reconstructing the property, but that's okay. I guess the last question I have is, do we have any sense of when construction, assuming this may pass, when construction we might be able to look forward to shovels in the ground?
That is another excellent question, and the applicant and the agent are here tonight, and I'm sure they would love to answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Amanda? I just have one question, and that is the report mentions in the comments from the Waterloo Region District School Board that they do have a site in the general area, and I was just wondering whether you know how close it is to this subdivision.
Yeah, through the chair, to the chair. So the subdivision to the west, that would be immediately on the other side of Roy Schmidt Road. I believe there is a school block in that subdivision.
Okay, thanks for that. I noted that North Lake is quite a hike from this little section, so, and that is the identified public school. Okay, thank you. And so we also have a delegation this evening. We have 2 delegations. So I will call up Trevor Hawkins, partner for MHBC Planning. You have 10 minutes. Please get yourself comfortable at the podium and state your name and your city of residence.
Thank you, Chair Wright. I think you stated my name, Trevor Hawkins from MHBC. Happy to be here after 8 years working through this process. It's been a long haul, but it's exciting to finish off the subdivision. I think Amanda's given a great overview of the presentation, or of the subdivision and the zoning. I'll just walk you through. So the lands are effectively an extension of conservation meadows. Because of the unique geography in the area, they weren't developed at the same time as conservation meadows, and they are part of the Beaver Creek Meadows district, as well as the servicing infrastructure, which I'm sure Council's familiar with. The school is actually proposed in the middle of the Cook-Mattamy subdivision, which is right next door, and those 2 subdivisions share a road. So Roy Schmidt Road is half in Activa subdivision and half in Mattamy subdivision. And you can access the school by walking through the Activa subdivision. There's a walkway block, which I'll show in a minute. Just wanted to bring this back to the Beaver Creek Meadows District Plan, just so I know that back in 2017, perhaps only Councillor Freeman was on council when this came forward. But this district plan actually dates back to 2015, when it was approved in January of 2015, and I believe the EA for Beaver Creek and conservation was approved also in 2015, if council can believe that. And here we are 10 years later, finally getting to see some progress, which is terrific. But as you can see from the district plan, this sort of layout of the subdivision more or less was always envisioned. What really has changed is the road connections. There's no longer those two road connections out to Conservation Drive, which was desired. Rideau River is the main intersection, which is being maintained and exists today. But you can see there's a large commercial block plan right across the street, so you can walk across the roundabout to the commercial, the school you can see here. So again, connectivity from this subdivision to the school. There's parks in all these subdivisions. They're all sort of integrated into one broader community. So even though this particular subdivision might not have all those elements, each of the subdivisions in this district contributes components to the Beaver Creek Meadows community that will be developed over the next 5 to 10 years. And to answer one of the questions about construction timing, obviously the construction of this subdivision is directly related to the timing of the infrastructure. So the subdivision is serviced by the pumping station in the Northgate subdivision, as well as the infrastructure in Beaver Creek Road. So when those pieces of important infrastructure are developed, this subdivision can proceed to building permits. So hopefully that will be sort of 27, 28 timing for when we can start to look at pursuing building permits for this subdivision. But obviously, not all of the elements are under the control of Activa as it relates to that infrastructure. In terms of the subdivision itself, it's designed to have the most intense components of the project close to Conservation Drive in accordance with the district plan. And then as you get closer and closer to Conservation Meadows and the existing development in that community, the intensity of the development gets less and less into single detached homes to sort of correspond with what we see already on some of the streets that will be shared with those residents. The park itself is going to be expanded, so the city has a park in that community today. The park will be expanded to offer more opportunities to program the park. So the park now has a play structure and a bit of a path in it, but there is quite a bit of space for the city to program as well as the land that they'll get through this subdivision to expand the offerings to members of the community in both these subdivisions. And then I think it's always important to bring it back to the planning framework. This subdivision really aligns quite well with the provincial planning statement. It has quite a mix of housing, really from the multi-unit all the way down to the single detached and everything in between. The zoning allows for quite a range of housing types and sizes. It aligns with and conforms to the region's official plan, the city's official plan. It's very consistent with the Beaver Creek Meadows District Plan, which, even though it's 10 years old, still, it still respects the planning framework that was established by that council back in 2015. It's compatible with the Conservation Meadows community in terms of the housing types. Obviously, the road connections were pre-established. It does provide for that range of housing, bigger park, and then the active transportation connections out to Conservation Drive, which will have its own, but also the walkway blocks to allow students who might live in this community to walk across to the school in the Mattamy subdivision. So we think it's well planned and well laid out, and we're excited to bring it forward to council for approval.
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering whether council has questions for Mr. Hawken. Go ahead, Mayor
Thank
McCabe.
you. Thanks, Trevor, for the presentation and for your work on this. And just with respect to the commercial options or that's there, because we recently made some official plan amendments that it would include the opportunity to put in things like cafes or neighborhood stores and 4x4 story housing. So do you foresee or, adding, did you make any changes to the proposal here to include any of those options in your, in the proposal?
Thank you, Mayor McCabe. The residential Beaver Creek zone that was created just for this community is modeled largely, because I can say this because I helped draft it, but modeled largely after existing zones in the bylaw. So when you look at the blocks on the screen here along Conservation Drive, they are modeled off of the R9 zone, which is sort of the low-density apartment, stacked townhouse type zone, and then the block closer to the roundabout is modeled after the RMU, residential mixed-use 20 zone. So those zones, or particularly that block 19 closest to the roundabout, it permits those types of mixed uses that you're referring to. It wouldn't permit a standalone commercial plaza per se, but it would permit commercial uses within a mixed-use building. The intent is not to take away from the lands across the street, which would be zoned for a commercial function, plaza, for example.
Okay, Councilor, are there any other questions for Mr. Hawkins? Okay, seeing none, we do have another delegate. Thank you very much, Mr. Hawkins. Christopher Prest, please make yourself welcome at the podium. You have 10 minutes, and we just need you to state your name and your city of residence.
Thank you. My name is Christopher Prest. I am actually a resident of this neighborhood in Waterloo, and I thank you for your time today, council members. I was actually enlightened to hear from the individual from Urgent Legends mention about people don't want concrete neighborhoods. I came to Waterloo in 2010 from Toronto. As you know, it's mostly concrete neighborhoods everywhere. And when I came here, I purchased a townhouse in a nice little neighborhood, actually this neighborhood specifically over on Grasslands Court. I wasn't married at the time, but there was a lot of young families, especially families with little children, in the area, and lots of great parks and places for people to play. I eventually got married, and I decided to stay in the neighborhood, and we built a home, specifically in the area that is in question here. And we have children, and we love playing at the parks that we mentioned today. And there's a lot of children in the area as well that love to play in those parks. And one of the questions that we have, and one of the concerns we generally have, is the mixed use residency and what that density increase is and what that would look like. As you know, this area has a lot of conservation in it, and there's an ecosystem, a lot of wildlife. There are wild turkeys in the area, deer, coyotes, rabbits, and we heard from council members earlier about how fireworks spook a lot of the animals in the areas, and it obviously has a negative impact, and an increase of building, an increase of individuals in the area would obviously have an impact on the ecosystem as well. Now, I can understand and appreciate the increase of homes that people need, but at the same time, most people do not want buildings built in the area, especially ones that would block the conservation. And the buildings in the pictures that we saw, they were the blue dots in the pink squares on it that would directly impact the view of all the single detached homes in the area of the conservation itself. So I believe it was 20 meters that the lady mentioned would be the general height. But the increase of individuals in the area as well draws more attention to people that would be around our children, automobiles that would be driving up and down, transit that may be needed in the area. Again, goes towards the general security of the individuals that live in the area, especially children. As you know, a lot of kids, they run across the street to the parks, or they play in the streets, etc. And an increase of capacity would potentially negatively impact that. So my question today is just, as you're considering or thinking about this amendment, to think about the increase of the density and what kind of impact that would have on the residents that live there, the nature that you see, the ecosystem of the wildlife in the area, and the general safety of the individuals that live in the area, especially children. So, and that's all I wish to raise. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prest. Does anyone on council have a question for the delegate? Okay, I seeing no questions. Thank you very much for your comments. Really appreciate that. And as someone who lives in Uptown, where we have great amount of density, I just want to acknowledge how important those green spaces are and how important that is to the city to ensure that we're creating access to green spaces. We definitely need it to have complete communities. Okay, I think we have maybe some more questions for staff, but I think, yeah, is there anyone else who would like to speak? No one? Okay, moving on from there. we could probably do, move this and then have further discussion if that's, oh, sorry, I've got, second page. Okay, great, thank you. If there are no more delegations, this formal public meeting is concluded and the application is now open to council for a motion and debate. So that is the direction we were going in. So I just want to see whether there is someone who would move this at this point. And that's Councillor Roach, and Councillor Rowe has seconded it. And so Councillor Bodley, if you would like to ask a question, go right ahead.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Through you, Chair Wright. It's a question for staff. The delegate referenced some of the conservation and conservation areas, and you had referenced earlier some of the environmental assessments and work that has gone into that. I also wanted to note that Mr. Hawkins had shared sort of the broader district, Beaver Creek Meadows district plan map, which, given that much of the other part of it is in Ward 2, I'm very familiar with, and there is a substantive amount of conservation land over on that side of the property that, or of the plan, that will ultimately either be retained by the city or in developers' hands, but zoned as conservation uses, so no buildings will be permitted there. Can you maybe, just for my purpose and for the general public's purpose, highlight if there are any specific conservation concerns or things that emerge from the environmental assessment in this particular area?
Thank you, through the chair, to Councillor Broadley. So for the purposes of this subdivision, there was no specific EA. The larger EA spoke to larger capital work, such as the upgrades of Conservation Drive and Roy Schmidt Road, which then influences this subdivision. This subdivision itself, it's not within the Grand River Conservation Authority regulation area, but they were circulated on the application because they have the lands further to the south, and then there's the communal stormwater management pond that's within their land. So the GRCA was circulated. This land is not in the regulation area, and we did receive comments, and any comments were implemented into the recommendation from staff.
That's great, thank you. And another question, if I may, through you, Chair Wright. The density that is alluded to in the smaller portion of the subdivision that's closest to Conservation Drive is, as Mr. Hawkins alluded to, modeled after RMU 20. I'm hoping, just for those who may be listening and may be paying attention to what is happening because of this part of the subdivision, that maybe you can highlight some of the broader Beaver Creek Meadows district plan, because it is my understanding that as we get closer to the Beaver Creek and Conservation intersection itself, there are actually permissions for actually higher height there. We're talking about RMU 40, up to 40 meters, 12-story buildings there. And I wanted, again, just for those who may be listening, to highlight that, or maybe get some commentary from you, although it may still be too early to say exactly what's going to happen there, as we don't have as some of those are under appeal, is my understanding.
Yes, so thank you, through the chair. So currently, block 19, which is closest to the intersection where the roundabout is to be, that's proposed to be residential Beaver Creek 5, which does allow for multi-use units in commercial at the ground floor and residential above. And that block is permitted to go to have a maximum density of 300 bedrooms per hectare and a maximum height of 20 meters. That is site-specific provision area 37, which is directly from the Beaver Creek Meadows district plan. In terms of other development, I might defer to my director on that one.
Welcome to the table. Mr. Cotter.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Certainly, as you indicated, Councillor Bodley, the intention is to increase density as you get towards Beaver Creek and Conservation Drive. Generally, the intention is medium density. There's still a number of matters to be resolved in the zoning for, say, the Northgate lands are not in place, nor is the zoning for the future Greenacre Park lands in place. So the intention, I would say, is for medium density. Exactly what that will look like will be determined more specifically either through the tribunal process or through future applications. But on this particular property, it's for mid-rise, as Ms. Wininsky said, immediately abutting Conservation Drive.
Any other questions for Mr. Cotter or Ms. Buzinski? Okay, I realize procedurally that I should have asked Councillor Roach to read the Bill 73 wording when he was moving this. So I'm going to return to that and ask you to do so now.
Whereas council has considered all written and oral submissions, and whereas council has considered the professional opinions of planning staff, therefore let it be resolved that council approve IPPW 2025-012, that council approve zone change application Z-17-20 Activa Holdings for 550 Roy Schmidt Road and 558 Conservation Drive as set out in Section 8 of IPPW 2025-012, that council approve draft plan of submission 30T-17403 Activa Holdings for 550 Roy Schmidt Road and 558 Conservation Drive as set out in Section 8 of IPPW 2025-012, that council delegate authority to the city's Director of Planning to make administrative and minor modifications to any standard condition of subdivision approval and/or site-specific condition of subdivision approval in relation to draft plan of subdivision 30T-17403 and minor red line revisions to draft plan of submission 30T-17403. That council delegate authority to the city's Director of Planning to determine if the conditions of draft approval are satisfied and to approve final registration in relation to draft plan of submission 30T-17403. That council further extend the time frame up for Activa Holdings, Inc. to obtain a building permit for the replacement of the two dwellings at 550 Roy Schmidt Road and 558 Conservation Drive until September 9th, 2030, pursuant to subsection 6.a of the city's demolition control bylaw.
Thank you very much for reading that out. And it was already seconded by Councillor Rowe. So at this point, if there's no further discussion, we can call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that discussion. Thanks to all who delegated. We really appreciate your contributions to this discussion. We are now moving on to consideration of notice of motion given at a previous meeting. There is none. Item 12 is notice of motion. We did have a motion in our early package that was made public. So I will refer to Mayor McCabe. Would you like to introduce this motion?
Thank you very much, through you, Chair. Yes, I think the motion, it's quite lengthy, but I think says really, I'm not going to repeat it, but it really, the essence of it is to call on the federal government and the provincial government, but particularly our new federal government to fast-track investments in infrastructure, because we know that there's continues to be great economic uncertainty coming out of our neighbors with a U to the south of us, and we know that local economies such as that in Waterloo and Waterloo region, that's really where small business, medium and large businesses, this is where we need support. And during 2020, in the COVID crisis, there was 23,000 projects that were funded by the primarily by the federal and provincial governments, that really, kept people employed, but and really brought some critical infrastructure to our communities. So the tariffs and the trade issues are certainly a real challenge for us in Waterloo and, across Waterloo region, Ontario and in Canada, but they're also a real opportunity. And I think if the federal government can move quickly with some stimulus funding and get it into local economies such as Waterloo and Waterloo regions, I think we'll really be able to build some additional infrastructure or rehabilitate some infrastructure. You see the three primary projects that are priorities for Waterloo, but we can really turn this crisis into an opportunity and really continue to build the city of the future and the region of the future. So I think we all know the issues behind this, so I'll just look for a mover and a second. Sorry, I'm the mover. I'll look for a seconder, I meant to say, and hope for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. So just looking around the horseshoe for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Hanmer. And is there any questions for Mayor McCabe at this point? Any discussion? Okay, I will call the vote then. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you very much, Mayor McCabe. At this point, we're moving on to item 13, communications and correspondence. There is none. 14, unfinished business. There is none. Item 15, questions. Does council have any questions? No, not 15 questions. Not at this point in the agenda. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to item 16, which is new business. Would anybody like to share anything? Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you.
Mayor McCabe.
I just wanted to, a couple of things I wanted to mention. First of all, that last Wednesday, I was really pleased to have been invited to attend the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations historical gathering. It was a three-day conference that they had, and I was only able to attend on the one day, but it was a really great learning opportunity for me to sit and listen to some of the presentations. One of the particularly interesting ones was about a presentation by one of the elders about the Moccasin Identifier project that had been conceived and spearheaded through an elder at the First Nation, at Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as, you know, there was some other particular opportunities to learn just in general about, you know, treaties and some of the ongoing history that of that area. So I really appreciated that, Chief Salt inviting me. The other thing I wanted to mention was that Saturday I had a community conversation with a number of volunteers who lead neighborhood associations and home associations, and Councillor Rowe joined me as well as some of our staff to have a facilitated conversation, and I just wanted to say thank you to them for the volunteering that they do across our community. And there was community leaders who came out as well. You know, it really just makes the work that are particularly those representatives in our neighborhood associations and home associations do really, they just do so much to build our community and to build networks and connections. And it's, you know, the end of volunteer week, but just can't thank them enough for that. And the final thing I wanted to say was a shout out to our council for the day. 8 grade 5 students who came to the State of the City last Thursday and then went with myself and a couple of staff throughout a number of city facilities. City staff were fantastic as usual in answering their very intelligent and thoughtful questions. They learned a ton about the different programs and services that the city offers, and as well as some of the career opportunities, and hopefully some of their minds are thinking about of that for the future. So just wanted to thank those fantastic grade 5 students for their ideas, and to thank all of the kids that submitted ideas to the city, and you know, the fact that they care about their future in Waterloo really is heartening and heartwarming, and it just means that our future here is really bright. So, and thanks to counselors who made an effort to go and talk to the kids in the classrooms and in other organizations to generate those ideas. So it was a great way to spend the day, and I appreciate everyone who contributed to it. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone else who has anything that they want to share? I will remark briefly that it was a weekend of celebrations in Ward 7. St. John's Christian Nursery School turned 40, and the adjacent Luther Manor turned 50. So that's one of our uptown Ward 7 nursery schools, and Luther Manor is a affordable housing unit for seniors. So thinking of the vision 50 years ago that resulted in benefits that we're still reaping today, it's really great to see these projects and to acknowledge that churches as third spaces in our communities do so much to contribute to that. And then I also want to note, Seven Shores celebrated its 10th anniversary in its current configuration. And speaking of another kind of third space community center, it's certainly a fantastic gathering space in Ward 7 where you see neighbors and all sorts of folks make that a destination during their week. So just wanted to acknowledge those things. And then lastly, the many organizers, I mean, the end of National Volunteer Week, and so many volunteers stepped up to run Jane's Walks throughout the city of Waterloo. I was able to join one on Sunday afternoon where we went and explored all sorts of different sustainable things that people have done to their homes in the Mary Ellen neighborhood. So we saw everything from permeable driveways to rain gardens to heat pump installations, and everyone got to ask questions and learn a little bit more about what their neighbors had been up to. Any other new business? Okay. We are moving on to item 17, which is enactment of bylaws. Do we have a mover for the recommendation here? Thank you, Councillor Rowe, and seconded by Councillor Roach. Thank you. I'll just call the vote on that. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And we need a mover for adjournment. That is Councillor Bodley. He's got a Leafs game to go to. We're at 8 p.m. So I've tried to stay on time here. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Roach. Okay, all in favor? We're done. 8 p.m.